Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some products from Gina K Designs. The star of the show, if you will, is the glorious goldfinches. And then I pulled some other sets because I was looking to make an encouragement card. So I used the sentiments from there. And then I also used the tapestry embossing folder. So in doing the card, their images are very generously sized, but I wanted a really full background. And so today we're going to be talking about how you can utilize one stamp set to really just kind of build out a whole scene, and you don't need anything else, really. I mean, I used a sentiment from another set, but that's just because it was the kind of card I was trying to make. But yeah, so stamping out my image, this is my glorious goldfinch. I love the name of this, probably because of the alliteration. But so I stamped that out in my Gina K black amalgam ink. This is safe for alcohol markers. I'm going to be coloring this with my Copics, but you can use whatever medium works for you. And then I'm also going to be using Gina's Masking Magic. This is really nice because it has a backer. So this is one of the ones that you can die cut. I'm not using any dies today. It's all a completely one layer panel. It's not a one layer card, but our scene is going to be one layer. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to trim this out. Now, for those of you who are like, I don't like fussy cutting, I get it. They have dies. I would recommend them. But you don't have to fussy cut out every little bit. Like you can see on the left-hand side, I didn't even bother cutting out any of the leaves or the trunk from that side. First of all, because I know I'm going to be trimming my panel down. Second of all, because I'm not going to be stamping anything over that area. So I basically needed the top and the bottom, and that was it. For some of the other leaves, like especially at the bottom, the smaller ones, I also didn't cut masks for those. I just made a mental note not to stamp over them. So how are we going to build this whole thing out? There's two florals in here. I chose the smaller one, and it is drawn at like kind of an open side angle where you can see a large portion of the flower on one side, but the other side is kind of flipped up. We are going to stamp this in different ways so that it looks like this bird is sitting in a bush or a tree that's flowering, but that the flowers look different. So they don't look all the same. And how we're going to achieve that is by stamping off the edge. So this one I stamped down. You can't tell it's not a full, complete open flower. I also stamped a mask for it. I only stamped one mask and trimmed one mask out simply because I know that I can move it around my project. If you're going to be doing heavier ink blending in the background, I would cut one for each, but I'm not. I'm going to be doing really soft ink blending just to fill in the gaps that would be in my tree or my bush, like sky gaps, I guess. So here, this one, I'm stamping it just as it's intended, the way that just straight up and down, I guess is the best way to put it. But this flower is going to be behind then all of those leaves. So it's going to look as if the leaves are in front of it. It's going to give us more dimension in our scene. And I didn't get a good impression the first time. That was probably me being lazy, not inking well. And then for the last one, I'm going to flip it upside down. And again, you're only going to be able to see just a little bit of the flower kind of tipped over. But because we've changed the perspective and it's an upside down flower, it will look as if it is a different flower. All the same flowers on the same flowering tree. Now, how are we going to fill in the rest of it? We're going to use the same stamp, guys. We're going to use the stamp with the bird, but because of the way that it's drawn and it has leaves in front of it and behind it, we are going to use just the leaf portion and fill in almost this whole background. So for this one, there was no way for me to avoid inking the bird's head, so I just masked it with some tape. I just used pixie tape. You can use any kind of washi tape or Scotch tape. I've used Scotch tape in the past too. And then I'm going to stamp that down. I'm going to move my mask. That part is important. Make sure you're moving your mask. But also I'm kind of moving this around my MISTI to make sure that I have enough room for all of my areas, that my stamp will still fit, because if your stamp doesn't fit in the MISTI, it's not going to stamp down properly. And then I'm just going to twist this and turn this however I need to make sure that I'm filling it in with the greenery and still getting a really organic look. You do kind of want to pay attention to like a little bit of the direction. You don't want all your leaves going across and then one leaf coming down, or like all your branches going across, I guess is what I should say, and one branch coming down. You want to make sure you're turning it so that it's all kind of at organic different angles, so that way it doesn't look strange. And then for the last time, I am going to move my floral up, and then I will stamp it again. Now, something to notice. This time, there was no way for me to get all of the leaves and avoid all of the bird. You'll see kind of in the bottom left-hand side, I end up getting some of the bird in the background, just his belly, but it is still there. Like, I can still see it. Obviously not his face. And again, I know I'm trimming this down. Also, something I didn't mention, when I was stamping my flowers, I intentionally stamped 3, working in odd numbers. Your brain will try to pair things if you do even numbers, but if you do odd, it's more pleasing to the eye, and your brain just kind of takes in the whole picture. So I intentionally stamped just 3 flowers. So it's going to give me 3 purplish pinks and 1 yellow. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to trim this down. Originally, I had just intended, like, I was just going to trim off kind of a 1/2 inch on each side. When I did it on the top, though, it wasn't enough. I needed to trim off more. Like, I could tell it didn't look right. So I had to go back in, and I ended up trimming off, I think, just shy of 3/4 of an inch, or exactly 3/4 of an inch. But now when you put it on an A2 size card, it's uneven. My edges are uneven. So I did have to go back in and trim the sides again. This is just going to make sure that my card is symmetrical, but the whole background is still full. Now, I could have put like another leaf kind of in that top left-hand corner, but I didn't really felt like it needed it. Sometimes when we're designing, we can get, like, when we're stamping all the things and we're, filling in all the gaps, we can kind of not leave any place for the eye to rest, for the card to breathe. And so I did leave some of my corners empty. I am going to go in. This is Ocean Mist, one of Gina K's inks. It's one of my favorite colors. I think I use it in every card, in every Gina K card that I make, because it's just like a really great, soft, bluish, green, teal color. And this is going to be my sky. Now, I could have masked for this, but because it's so light and my coloring is going to be so vibrant, I am not even worried about it being in the background at all. Even if it goes over my leaves, like the green is going to cover that, it's no big deal. So let's move on to the coloring of the bird. Now, self-admittedly, I know very little about birds. So I did look up the coloring of the goldfinch, and I haven't always been a big bird fan. I'm not a bird fan in real life. In real life, me no likey the birds. In my cards, though, I am coming around to them because I feel like they're a really great general image that you could use for a lot of things. I'm using it as an encouragement card, but you could use it for a sympathy card, for a congratulations card. You could use it for a lot of things. Birds are very versatile images. So I am coming around to them. But let's talk about the coloring. Coloring goldfinches is not for the colorist who is faint of heart. They have black wings, and you cannot not add black to an item that is supposed to be black. Just like when you're coloring white, you have to leave white area. So I went in with my darkest color, and this is kind of a lesson in stick-to-itiveness, because I went in and there's lines that are drawn by the illustrator. I hit all those up with my darkest color, which is kind of like his little feathers. And right away I was like, oh, maybe I've gone too dark. Maybe I have gone too dark. He looks spotted. Goldfinches are not spotted. I don't want a spotted goldfinch. So here's the thing, though. Just keep with it. And don't be afraid to add more color. So here I'm layering my colors. I went over it with a YO2 to try to lighten it up. That didn't work. I went over it with a YO8 to try to lighten it up. That didn't work. So now I'm working my way back towards my darkest colors. because ultimately that was the answer and I was just scared of it. So the answer to blending it, I mean, besides all of the other work that we're doing, we're layering the midtones and the lighter colors to try to make those spots a little bit lighter. At the end of the day, the answer was to add more of the color that was the spots, which was the darkest color. And that is what is going to make it blend. Now, I didn't go in, I wasn't super heavy-handed with it, and I did do it as flicking strokes that would kind of create some feather-like texture, but that's really what got it to blend. So don't be afraid of your darker colors. In situations like this, this wing is black. We're going to have to put black in it. We're going to have to put dark color in it. To get some contrast in that beautiful kind of gold feather look, you're going to have to put in some of those darker colors. So it is a little bit scary, especially if you're uncomfortable with dark colors. I would recommend starting with your lightest color and then working out to your darkest color, and then working back out to your lightest color. That's how I colored for years until I got more confident with my coloring. But that's a really great way, especially if you're scared of darker colors or you're new to coloring. It's a super good way to get more comfortable adding in those contrasting colors, which is going to give you that wow factor to your coloring. So now with the wing, I'm using a black, but I'm also using 2 grays. You wouldn't think that it would make much of a difference, and I'm not sure that you can tell on camera, but in real life, it gives it a more feathered texture because we have those flicks of lighter grays in there, which in real life, things that are black are not just flat black. They have high points or maybe shiny points or, highlight points that are going to be lighter. So here at this point, I have my 2 areas of white. After looking them up, they do have a little bit of white in their wings. They have kind of a white tushy. That's what the grays that we did there. And they do have some black. We're going to come back in and put more white in, but that's going to be at the end of the card. For the beak, I used the same 2 darkest colors as I used for my body, but I actually went over with a different lighter color, which was an orange, and that way it's going to change the tone of it, so the beak is not the same color as the body. I'm using the same yellow combination I used for the goldfinch as a repeat color in the centers of my flowers. This is just going to give us really good continuity throughout the card. And then we're going to move on to the coloring of the flowers. Now, how did I choose the coloring of the flowers? It was actually really, really easy. I'm not a yellow girl. I don't love a yellow. But goldfinches are yellow. There's no way around that. I cannot color this bird at least for me, for the first time. I'm totally open to artistic interpretation, and I absolutely could color it something else at another time, but I'm just learning how to color this image, and so I wanted to stay true to that. So yellow's complement is purple. So that was really easy. I knew that my bird was going to shine as my focal point by putting purple in the background because they work nicely together. They're opposites on the color wheel. They are complementary colors. And so I didn't have to worry about whether or not they would go. I know they will go. I did, however, take a little bit of creative license with the type of purple that I chose. I did have it be more on the pink side because I just felt like that kind of played nicer with the yellow-green that I was going to be doing in the leaves. So the purples that I chose, I did choose my darkest color, which is typical of me, which is a V09. The next darkest color is a V06, also typical. But then after that, normally I do a V04, but a V04 is like a purple's purple. A V05 is a pink purple. And so I chose that. And then my lightest color is actually a pink. It's a RV. And so I'm going to kind of glaze over that, and it's still going to read as purple, but it's going to be more on the pink side. Color glazing, if you're not familiar, you haven't watched my channel, that's for sure. But if you're not familiar, it's basically just changing the hue of the color of your image by taking one other color and just going over the entire thing. So that is what we are doing in order to get our pinkish purple kind of look. It's something I do really often, and it's something that's a great way to stretch your markers if you don't have as many colors as maybe you would like, or you're still building your collection, or you have a crafty budget and alcohol markers are expensive. So yeah, that's what we're doing there. And again, I'm just following the lines of that the illustrator has drawn. These are beautiful florals. So if they drew a line, I added some shading there to give it a more ruffled look. And then every layer that I'm adding, here's where we're doing the glazing, and you're going to see an immediate difference between the two. One is substantially more pink. But doing that, you want to put down your darkest color to get that ruffled effect, but then every consecutive color as you're working back out to your lightest color, you're just kind of going to extend the color. So you'll completely cover the VO9 and extend the VO6 out, completely cover the VO6 and extend the VO5. Color glazing can sometimes kind of rob you of your dimension. It will bleach out the colors below it. That is what happened to me here. So I went back in first with the VO5. I realized that wasn't giving me enough contrast. So then I went back in with the VO6 and was able to put kind of that dimension and that contrast back in. And I was really happy with the way that they looked. So that was where I left it. I didn't blend it out any further. I still have that really nice pink that's going on within my purple. And then I will color the rest of them because it's the same flower. Remember, we're doing it all the same. It is challenging in situations like this where, especially where this branch kind of comes over the flower, to not get color where you don't want it. It's almost impossible for me to do, at least. So I do go back in with just a 0, which is a colorless blender, and just kind of push that color back out. So that way it's not going to be purple inside my leaves. And if you find that you have a little bit of a stubborn color, like maybe you're doing a red's really stubborn, just make sure you're letting it, like giving it 10, 15 seconds to dry in between, and then go back in and do it again. You don't just want to keep saturating it while it's wet, because then you're not going to be moving the color. You're just going to be causing it to bleed everywhere. For the leaves, I did shading kind of in the tops and the bottoms. This is just going to give it a little bit more of a round appearance, but you can do it just from the base and they would still be very pretty. So now as we finish up the rest of the coloring, I was in a live I was in Jennifer's live chatting, and somebody had said like, oh, I love your story time. And I know that it's, even my husband commented the other day, and he was like, yeah, mommy doesn't tell, he was telling her daughter, mommy doesn't tell stories about us anymore. I do try to continue to like give bits and pieces of what's going on in my life, but there's a couple of reasons why story time isn't as readily available as it was before. First of all, we're trying a lot of new things. There's a lot more experimentation, so consequently there's a lot more instruction. But also, guys, I don't work outside of the house anymore. I work in my home, which means my experiences with life are very limited to what is happening inside my house. And if you have young children, you know that sometimes it's like Groundhog Day. It's just like the same day over and over again. So when I'm talking to you about crafting, like the reason I'm talking about crafting is because that's what I do. Like that's what I do now. I don't do anything else. I'm trying to be better about it. I'm trying to kind of get myself in a situation where I spend more time with adults, but it is challenging because we've always had a more challenging schedule. So here, the coloring is all done. I didn't know if I wanted to put it on black or if I wanted to put it on purple. And honestly, I did a little nod to my friend Gina, who does like this thin black matte on all of her cards. So there's my nod to Gina. If you are not familiar, Gina has a huge following for a very good reason. She's a wonderful person and a fantastic businesswoman. But she always puts this little black mat on. So that is what I am doing. And it worked beautifully. It was a great little trick. And then I did the purple. I embossed it with that tapestry background. This is just giving us a little bit of texture in the background and making it more interesting, so it's not quite as plain. Then the Heat Embossed Sentiment I trimmed down into a label. So this does have a lot going on as far as the coloring and like the scene that we built. But if you are a person who is on a budget and you have to make choices about what you're going to spend your money on, look to see if you have, like if you're picking out stamp sets or dies, whichever you're into, that you can use multiple ways or that you can build out in multiple ways, because that's going to help you get more for your money. And I think we're really all looking for that. You know, doll hairs, as as my son calls them, when you're spending your own doll hairs, you want to make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck. At least I do anyway. So yeah, I am trying to still incorporate story time, even though my life is like very meh right right now. I mean, I guess I could tell you how Jellybean and I color and play Play-Doh, but there's not really anything too exciting about that. Just a family playing Play-Doh, much to my husband's dismay, because it gets other places that he doesn't want it, and then he just gets upset. Anyway, you can get blue Play-Doh out of carpet, just in case you wondered. It is possible. We did. But so yeah, so that's just, but I am going to try. I recently kind of looked to see what kind of events are going on in my city, and I've always been a big reader, huge reader. I actually just finished Dave Grohl's autobiography. He's the lead singer of the Foo Fighters. I love autobiographies. I think they're fascinating. And that was a really good read. So I did look around. There is one that meets locally. So I do think that next week I am going to try to go to that and see what that is about, and maybe just get out of the house and interact with some adults that I'm not related to. And then also I have a cookie class coming up, a cookie decorating class, which is just with my family, but I'm totally fine with that. So to finish out the card, obviously I glued the sentiment down. I chose to do it flat since I popped up the whole panel. I added some clear glitters, because I love clear glitters, to the florals and just the yellow part of the bird. And then I'm going to go in with a white gel pen. I did the little dot on his eye. I gave him a highlight on his beak. And then I'm going to use this very sketchy, like I'm just going to let it streak within this wing to put in just some more really delicate white spots. Never underestimate the white gel pen. It is a great tool to have. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate your time as always, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.